Benjamin Carter sat at the corner table pretending to read his phone, but his eyes never left his son Lucas. The 10-year-old boy struggled with his wheelchair, trying to reach the bathroom while other customers barely glanced his way. Benjamin had money, power, influence, but he couldn't protect his son from the world's indifference. That's when Maya, a young black waitress finishing her double shift, noticed what no one else had seen. What happened in the next 60 seconds would expose a depth of humanity that Benjamin thought had vanished from the world, and prove that sometimes the most profound acts of kindness come from the most unexpected people. The Golden Spoon restaurant occupied 3 floors of Manhattan's most exclusive building on Fifth Avenue, where a single dinner reservation required a 6-month waiting list and cost more than most families spent on groceries in a month. Benjamin Carter, 42-year-old CEO of Carter Technologies, was worth $450 million after revolutionizing cloud computing infrastructure. His company employed over 15,000 people across 12 countries, and his name regularly appeared on Forbes' lists of influential tech leaders. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight was about Lucas, his 10-year-old son who had been born with spina bifida and confined to a wheelchair since birth. Despite his physical limitations, Lucas possessed one of the brightest minds Benjamin had ever encountered. Just 3 days earlier, the boy had won first place at the Manhattan Science Fair, defeating students from the city's most elite private schools with his innovative project on renewable energy storage solutions. "Dad, I really need to use the bathroom," Lucas whispered, his small hands gripping the titanium wheels of his custom-designed wheelchair. The device had cost more than most cars, equipped with the latest technology for mobility assistance. But it couldn't navigate the social obstacles that Lucas faced every day. Benjamin watched with growing anxiety as his son began the challenging journey across the restaurant's dining room. The Golden Spoon's interior design prioritized aesthetic elegance over practical accessibility. Tables were positioned close together, creating narrow pathways that even able-bodied patrons found challenging to navigate. Crystal chandeliers hung low, and the polished marble floors were dotted with strategically placed decorative elements that created an obstacle course for anyone using mobility aids. Other diners looked up from their conversations with expressions ranging from mild annoyance to outright discomfort. Benjamin recognized the looks. He'd seen them countless times over the past decade. Some people pulled their expensive handbags closer, as if disability might somehow contaminate their belongings. Others whispered to their companions, their voices carrying just loud enough for him to catch fragments. Inappropriate for this type of establishment, and should consider the other guests. Mrs. Elizabeth Pemberton, the restaurant's head hostess, had greeted Benjamin with effusive warmth when he'd made the reservation, dropping hints about the establishment's exclusive clientele and prestigious reputation. Her attitude had shifted noticeably when she saw Lucas's wheelchair, though she maintained professional courtesy. Now, watching the boy struggle through the dining room, she looked distinctly uncomfortable, calculating whether offering assistance might disturb other high-paying customers. The past 3 years had been the most challenging of Benjamin's life. His wife Rebecca had died in a car accident when Lucas was 7, leaving Benjamin to navigate single parenthood while running a multinational corporation. Rebecca had been Lucas's greatest advocate, the one person who could make him feel completely normal and valued in any social situation. She had possessed an extraordinary gift for seeing past people's prejudices and helping them recognize Lucas's remarkable intelligence and personality. Benjamin still remembered the last conversation he'd had with Rebecca in the hospital, her hand weak in his as machines monitored her failing vital signs. "Promise me," she had whispered, her voice barely audible above the mechanical breathing. "Promise me you'll never let the world make him feel small. He's going to do incredible things, Benjamin. Don't let them convince him otherwise." Those words haunted him daily as he watched Lucas navigate a society that seemed determined to define him by his limitations rather than his limitless potential. The funeral had been a turning point in more ways than one. Benjamin had expected their social circle to rally around them, to offer the kind of support that wealthy families typically provided each other during times of crisis. Instead, he discovered the ugly truth about conditional friendship. Dinner invitations stopped coming when hosts realized that accommodating Lucas's wheelchair might inconvenience other guests. Business associates who had once competed for his attention suddenly became too busy to return calls when they learned that Benjamin's priorities had shifted from networking events to occupational therapy appointments. Since her death, Benjamin had struggled to fill that role. His wealth could provide the best medical care, the most advanced equipment, and access to exclusive venues, but it couldn't buy the genuine human connections that Lucas needed. The accident had also revealed the shallow nature of their social circle. Friends who had seemed genuine disappeared when life became complicated, when dinner parties turned into medical appointments and weekend plans were cancelled for therapy sessions. Tonight's dinner was supposed to celebrate Lucas's science fair victory, but Benjamin had ulterior motives. He wanted to test something, whether anyone in their privileged world would show genuine kindness to Lucas without expectation of reward or recognition. The results so far had been predictably disappointing, confirming his growing cynicism about human nature. Maya Johnson had been working at the Golden Spoon for 8 months, pulling double shifts 6 days a week to pay for nursing school while supporting her family in Detroit. At 24, she was one of the youngest servers on staff, but her work ethic and natural empathy had earned respect from both colleagues and management. She arrived at 6 a.m. to prep for lunch service and rarely left before midnight, her feet aching and her back sore from carrying heavy trays for 18 hours straight. The exhaustion was bone-deep and constant, the kind that made her question whether her dreams were worth the sacrifice. There were nights when Maya would collapse into her tiny studio apartment, too tired to eat the leftover sandwich she'd saved from her break, wondering if she'd ever actually make it through nursing school or if she was just fooling herself about having a future. Beyond serving overpriced meals to people who barely acknowledged her existence. But every morning she thought about Marcus. Sweet, brilliant Marcus, who deserved a world where his sister could become the advocate he needed. She thought about all the children like him who needed someone in the medical field who truly understood what it meant to be different, to be dismissed, to be seen as less than whole. That vision of purpose pulled her from bed each morning, forced her tired feet back into uncomfortable shoes, and gave her the strength to smile at customers who treated her as invisible furniture. The job was a means to an end, but Maya had learned to find meaning in small moments. She took pride in remembering regular customers' preferences, in making a child laugh while their parents discussed business, in being the bright spot in someone's difficult day. These tiny victories helped her maintain the optimism that her brother always said was her superpower, the ability to see light even in the darkest circumstances. The job was a means to an end. Maya's dream was to become a pediatric nurse, specifically working with children who had developmental and physical disabilities. Her inspiration came from her younger brother Marcus, who had been born with cerebral palsy and autism. Growing up, Maya had watched Marcus face countless challenges, not just physical ones, but the social isolation that came from living in a world that often saw disability as something to pity or ignore. Marcus was brilliant, funny, and creative, with an encyclopedic knowledge of astronomy and a gift for making anyone laugh. But most people never got to see those qualities, because they couldn't look past his wheelchair and communication differences. Maya had spent her childhood and teenage years advocating for her brother, learning to recognize the signs of prejudice and developing strategies to help Marcus feel valued and included. When Benjamin and Lucas had been seated earlier that evening, Maya had immediately noticed something familiar in the father's protective vigilance and the child's defensive posture. She recognized the dynamic from her own family, the way Lucas held his shoulders slightly hunched, prepared for judgment, and how Benjamin watched every interaction with the readiness to intervene if necessary. Throughout their meal, Maya had observed other customers' reactions to Lucas with growing anger. She watched wealthy patrons deliberately avoid eye contact, saw servers whisper among themselves about the situation at table 12, and noticed how people strategically positioned their belongings to make Lucas's path more difficult rather than easier. The casual cruelty disguised as social propriety reminded her of every birthday party Marcus hadn't been invited to, every restaurant that had suggested they might be more comfortable somewhere else, every adult who had spoken about her brother as if he couldn't hear or understand. She remembered the way people would address her instead of Marcus when asking about his needs, reducing him to his diagnosis rather than recognizing him as a complete person. Those memories still had the power to make her blood boil. Maya would never forget the day a store manager had asked her to control Marcus when he was simply stimming, a harmless hand flapping that helped him process overwhelming sensory input. Or the time a teacher had suggested that Marcus might be happier in a special school, despite his obvious intellectual gifts. Each incident had taught Maya that the world's problem wasn't with people like Marcus and Lucas. It was with society's failure to expand its definition of normal. She had learned early that silence in the face of prejudice was complicity. Her mother had taught her that when you witness injustice and do nothing, you become part of the problem. Maya, her mother would say, we may not have money or power, but we have our voices and our actions. Use them to speak for those who can't speak for themselves. That lesson had shaped every aspect of Maya's character, turning her into someone who couldn't stand by and watch a child be diminished by the ignorance of others. Now, watching Lucas struggle toward the bathroom while other diners created unnecessary obstacles, Maya felt the familiar surge of protective anger that had motivated her throughout her life. She saw the building frustration in the boy's face and the helpless rage in his father's eyes. Benjamin fought against every instinct to help, clearly understanding that Lucas needed to maintain his independence even when the world seemed designed to undermine it. Without hesitation, Maya abandoned the wine order she was taking from a table of investment bankers who had been treating her like invisible furniture throughout their meal. She approached Lucas, just as he became trapped between two tables whose occupants had positioned their chairs to create an impassable barrier, while pretending to be absorbed in conversation about their latest stock acquisitions. "Hey there, champion," Maya said warmly, kneeling to Lucas's eye level with a smile that immediately transformed her tired features. "Looks like you're dealing with some pretty challenging traffic here. Mind if I help clear a path through this obstacle course?" Lucas looked up, startled by the genuine kindness in her voice. Most adults who addressed him directly did so with either exaggerated sympathy or uncomfortable awkwardness. Maya's tone was natural and respectful, treating him as an equal rather than a charity case. "I can manage it myself," Lucas replied quietly, displaying the fierce independence his father had worked to instill. "I just need people to move their stuff." "I bet you can," Maya said confidently. "But even race car drivers have pit crews to help clear the track when there are obstacles. How about we show these folks what real teamwork looks like?" What happened next would become legendary at the Golden Spoon and change the trajectory of multiple lives. Maya didn't simply push Lucas's wheelchair or condescendingly clear a path. Instead, she began an elaborate performance that transformed the entire atmosphere of the restaurant while celebrating Lucas's abilities rather than focusing on his limitations. "Ladies and gentlemen," Maya announced in the enthusiastic voice of a professional sports commentator, speaking loudly enough for half the restaurant to hear, "please direct your attention to the main dining floor, where we're witnessing an absolutely incredible demonstration of precision navigation and strategic thinking." Lucas began to giggle as Maya continued her commentary. Making his way through this challenging course with style and determination is Lucas Carter, age 10, who just 3 days ago defeated students from Manhattan's most prestigious schools to win first place in the Citywide Science Fair with his groundbreaking research on renewable energy solutions. The investment bankers who had been blocking the path found themselves suddenly part of an unexpected performance. Other diners stopped their conversations to watch as Maya created an imaginary racecourse, complete with commentary about Lucas's superior spatial reasoning and advanced problem-solving skills. "And here comes the technical section," Maya called out, "where only drivers with exceptional mathematical abilities can calculate the optimal path through complex geometric obstacles." Watch as Lucas demonstrates the same analytical thinking that earned him recognition from Columbia University's engineering department. The atmosphere in the restaurant underwent a complete transformation. Customers who had been studiously ignoring Lucas began smiling and applauding his progress. A little girl at a nearby table started waving enthusiastically, while an elderly gentleman began offering his own encouraging commentary. Maya had accomplished something remarkable. She had made Lucas the hero of his own story rather than a problem to be solved or avoided. Benjamin felt tears welling in his eyes as he watched his son's face light up with pure joy for the first time since Rebecca's death. In less than 2 minutes, this young woman had accomplished what years of expensive therapy and carefully orchestrated social events had failed to achieve. She had made Lucas feel celebrated for who he was rather than pitied for what he couldn't do. When they reached the bathroom, Maya helped Lucas with the heavy door while maintaining the playful energy that had transformed his journey into a triumph. "I'll be right here when you're ready for the victory lap back to home base," she announced. "And I have it on good authority that our chef has prepared something special for science fair champions." While Lucas was in the bathroom, Benjamin approached Maya, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you for what you just did. I haven't seen him smile like that since his mother died 3 years ago. Maya's expression softened as she recognized the pain behind Benjamin's controlled facade. He's an amazing kid, Mr. Carter. Anyone can see how bright and special he is. Sometimes adults just need a reminder to look past their own discomfort and see the person instead of the disability. Most people see the wheelchair first, Benjamin admitted. His mother had a gift for helping others see Lucas for who he really is. Since she died, I felt like I'm failing him every day, unable to protect him from a world that often treats him as either an inspiration or an inconvenience. You're not failing him, Maya said firmly. The confidence and independence he shows prove you're doing an incredible job. The problem isn't with Lucas or your parenting, it's with a society that hasn't learned to value people for their character and abilities rather than their physical differences. When Lucas emerged from the bathroom, Maya was ready to continue the celebration. Ready for that victory lap, champion? I hear there might be some congratulations in order for our distinguished guest. The return journey was even more triumphant than the trip to the bathroom. Other customers actively moved chairs aside and called out encouragement. The little girl who had been waving presented Lucas with a hand-drawn picture of a volcano, inspired by Maya's mention of his science project. The elderly gentleman stopped them to share that his grandson was also interested in science and would love to meet a fellow young researcher. Back at their table, Maya brought Lucas an elaborate chocolate dessert topped with a sparkler. "This is our special recognition dessert for exceptional young scientists," she announced. "I understand someone built a volcano that impressed university professors and demonstrated advanced understanding of chemical reactions." Lucas beamed with pride. "It erupted exactly when it was supposed to, 3 times in a row. I figured out how to control the timing using different mineral combinations." The judges said my explanation of the chemical processes was college-level work. "That's absolutely incredible," Maya responded with genuine enthusiasm. "I'm studying to become a nurse, and I've taken advanced chemistry courses. What you accomplished requires understanding complex concepts that many undergraduate students struggle with. You clearly have exceptional scientific abilities." Benjamin watched in amazement as Maya engaged Lucas in a sophisticated conversation about experimental methodology and chemical principles, never talking down to him or treating him as anything less than a brilliant young scientist. She asked thoughtful questions about his research process and shared her own experiences with laboratory work, creating a genuine intellectual exchange that made Lucas glow with confidence. What struck Benjamin most profoundly was Maya's complete absence of the uncomfortable energy that most adults brought to interactions with Lucas. There was no forced cheerfulness, no patronizing tone, no obvious effort to be inspirational or uplifting. Instead, Maya treated Lucas exactly as she would any accomplished young researcher, with respect for his intellect and genuine interest in his work. She didn't lower her vocabulary or simplify her concepts, trusting Lucas to engage at whatever level felt comfortable to him. The conversation revealed Lucas's depth of knowledge in ways that formal educational settings rarely allowed. Away from the pressure of standardized tests and grade-level expectations, he could demonstrate the full extent of his understanding. Maya's questions drew out his passion for renewable energy, his concerns about environmental sustainability, and his dreams of developing technologies that could help solve global problems. She listened to his responses with the attention typically reserved for adult experts, validating his ideas while challenging him to think even more deeply. As the evening progressed, Benjamin learned more about Maya's background. She worked multiple jobs while attending community college, sending money home to support her single mother and disabled brother. Despite exhausting 16-hour days and constant financial pressure, she maintained an optimism and compassion that Benjamin found both humbling and inspiring. "Maya," Benjamin said when she brought their check, "can I ask you something personal? Why did you do what you did tonight? You could have simply ignored us like everyone else." Maya paused thoughtfully. "My younger brother Marcus has cerebral palsy and autism. When we go out in public, people stare at him like he's broken or treat him like he's invisible. But Marcus is the funniest, smartest person I know. He just experiences the world differently and needs different kinds of support." She glanced at Lucas, who was folding his napkin into an origami crane. "Lucas reminds me of Marcus. They both have this incredible light inside them that makes everything better. But sometimes the world tries to dim that light by focusing on limitations instead of possibilities. I can't fix society's prejudices, but I can make sure that in my presence, Kids like Lucas and Marcus know they're valued and celebrated. Benjamin felt his throat tighten with emotion. Lucas hasn't had many people in his life who see that light since his mother died. Most people either pity him or treat him like an inspiration. Very few actually engage with him as the complete, fascinating person he is. That's their loss, Maya said with conviction. Lucas is going to change the world someday. I can see it in how he approaches problems and talks about his research. His disability isn't what defines him. His brilliant mind and generous heart are what make him extraordinary. As they prepared to leave, Lucas wheeled over to Maya and tugged on her apron. Will you be here next time we come? I want to tell you about my next project. I hope so, sweetheart, Maya said, kneeling for a proper goodbye. But even if I'm not, remember what happened tonight. You are amazing exactly as you are, and don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Benjamin handed Maya a tip that was larger than most people's monthly salary, but she hesitated to accept it. Mr. Carter, this is too much. I was just treating Lucas the way every child deserves to be treated. No, Benjamin said quietly. You did something extraordinary. You saw my son as a complete human being and helped him feel valued in a world that often makes him feel invisible. That's worth more than any amount of money. Maya accepted the tip graciously, knowing it would help cover her next semester's tuition. But she had no idea that Benjamin had already made a decision that would transform both their lives forever. That night, as Benjamin tucked Lucas into bed, his son was still glowing from the evening's experience. Dad, Lucas said sleepily, Maya made me feel like I was the most important person in the whole restaurant. She didn't see my wheelchair first, she saw me first. The simple profundity of that statement hit Benjamin like a physical blow. In one sentence, his 10-year-old son had articulated the difference between pity and respect, between charity and genuine human connection. Benjamin stayed awake long into the night, pacing his home office and wrestling with emotions he hadn't allowed himself to feel since Rebecca's death. For 3 years, he had been failing Lucas in ways he was only now beginning to understand. His wealth had bought access and accommodation, but it hadn't bought acceptance. His influence had opened doors, but it hadn't opened hearts. He had been so focused on protecting Lucas from the world's cruelty that he had forgotten to help him experience the world's potential for beauty. The next morning, Benjamin made several phone calls that would set remarkable events in motion. He contacted the dean of Columbia University's nursing program to discuss scholarship opportunities. He called his company's charitable foundation to establish a new educational fund. He reached out to medical professionals about creating a specialized pediatric facility. 3 days later, Maya received a call that left her speechless. She had been awarded a full scholarship to Columbia's nursing program, with additional support for living expenses and books. The scholarship came with one requirement: completing an internship at a new pediatric therapy center being established for children with disabilities. When Maya arrived for her next shift at the Golden Spoon, she found Benjamin and Lucas waiting at their usual table with conspiratorial smiles. We heard about some very exciting news, Benjamin said with obvious satisfaction. Lucas insisted we congratulate you personally. Maya, Lucas called excitedly. Dad told me you're going to Columbia to become a nurse. That's so cool. You'll be able to help kids like me, and you already know how to make us feel special. Maya sat down, overwhelmed by the sudden change in her circumstances. I don't understand how this happened. Scholarships like this don't just appear randomly. Benjamin exchanged a meaningful look with Lucas. Sometimes good things happen to good people who put kindness into the world. You showed my son genuine respect and celebration when you had no obligation to do so. Some gestures deserve recognition. Did you arrange this? Maya asked directly. What matters, Benjamin said gently, is that you'll be able to pursue your dream of helping children. And Lucas and I hope you'll consider the Carter Pediatric Development Center for your internship. Maya felt tears streaming down her face as the magnitude of Benjamin's generosity became clear. Mr. Carter, I can't accept something this enormous. It's too much. Maya, Lucas said seriously, Dad taught me that when someone does something really important for you, you should do something important for them back. You made me feel like a superhero when most people make me feel like a problem. Now you get to become a real superhero for other kids. 6 months later, Maya walked across Columbia's graduation stage with highest honors while Benjamin and Lucas cheered from the audience. She had completed her degree while working part-time at the Carter Pediatric Development Center, a state-of-the-art facility that Benjamin had built in honor of his late wife's advocacy work. The center specialized in helping children with disabilities develop confidence and independence through innovative programs that emphasized ability rather than limitation. Maya had helped design many of the therapeutic protocols, drawing on her experience with Marcus and her natural gift for seeing potential rather than problems. Lucas, now 11 and more confident than ever, had become the center's unofficial ambassador. He welcomed new families and demonstrated that children with disabilities could achieve remarkable things when given proper support and encouragement. His science fair success had evolved into serious research on accessibility technology, with several of his innovations already being developed for commercial use. On the first anniversary of their meeting, Benjamin, Lucas, and Maya returned to the Golden Spoon for a celebration dinner. Maya wore scrubs from her new position as head nurse at the city's children's hospital, where she had gained recognition for her exceptional ability to connect with young patients and their families. That night changed everything for us, Benjamin reflected as they shared dessert. Lucas gained confidence, I gained perspective, and we both gained a friend who taught us that the most valuable things in life can't be bought. They have to be earned through kindness and genuine human connection. Maya smiled, watching Lucas demonstrate a new scientific concept to their fascinated waiter. I learned something too. Helping others doesn't just change their lives, it transforms your own in ways you never expect. Lucas looked up with a grin that reminded Maya of that first magical evening. Maya, remember when you told me I was amazing exactly as I am? Of course I remember. Well, you should remember it too because you're the most amazing person I know. Benjamin watched his son and Maya laughing together, marveling at how a 60-second act of kindness had blossomed into a friendship that had transformed all their lives. Maya hadn't just treated Lucas with dignity that night, she had reminded Benjamin that humanity's greatest strength lies in our capacity to see the worth in every person and act on that recognition. The Golden Spoon had established an annual service award in Maya's honor, recognizing employees who went above and beyond to ensure every guest felt welcomed and valued. The restaurant staff now received training on disability awareness and inclusive service, creating an environment where all families could enjoy special occasions without fear of judgment or exclusion. 2 years later, Maya completed her master's degree and accepted the position of Director of Pediatric Services at the Carter Center. She knew she would spend her career ensuring that children like Lucas and Marcus received not just medical care, but the respect and encouragement they needed to reach their full potential. Lucas, now 13, had indeed begun changing the world through his accessibility innovations and advocacy work. His inventions had improved mobility devices for thousands of children, and his scholarship funds supported other young people with disabilities pursuing careers in science and technology. Benjamin often reflected on that transformative evening, remembering how close he had come to losing faith in human goodness after Rebecca's death. Maya's spontaneous act of kindness had restored his belief in the power of compassion and shown Lucas that he was valued not despite his disability, but because of the unique perspective and strength it had given him. Their story became a testament to the ripple effects of genuine kindness. What began as a simple gesture of inclusion had grown into a movement that touched thousands of lives, proving that when we choose to see the best in others and act on that vision, we create possibilities that extend far beyond our imagination. As Maya often told the children at the Carter Center, everyone has something extraordinary inside them. Sometimes it just takes the right person noticing that spark and helping it shine. That night at the Golden Spoon, she had helped Lucas's light shine brighter than ever, never knowing that in doing so, she had illuminated a path toward her own dreams and created bonds that would enrich all their lives forever. The lesson was simple but profound. In a world that often emphasizes differences and limitations, the choice to celebrate someone's abilities and potential can be transformative. Maya's decision to see Lucas as a brilliant young scientist rather than a disabled child had changed not just that one evening, but the entire trajectory of their lives.